My name is Nora Ellison, 43 years old. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, quiet as a thief. I was in my home office, the one I designed like a small museum, climate control humming softly, frames aligned to a laser, 23 years of jerseys gazing back at me, like a row of old friends who'd kept my secrets. My ex-husband always rolled his eyes at them. Sports memorabilia is just adults playing with toys, he'd say to our friends, smiling the way people smile when they're absolutely sure they're right. The envelope said what it always says when people run out of language: irreconcilable differences. But the truth had a name and a membership at a yoga studio. He'd been seeing his instructor for 8 months. I didn't find out because I'm brilliant. I found out because credit cards talk when people lie. Hotel charges during his supposed work late nights, a perfume I never wore, a cafe near a studio he never visited before. 3 days later, his lawyer called. My client is entitled to half of all marital assets, he said, and somewhere under the words, I heard the clink of a cash register. Including what? I asked, even though I knew. Your sports collection, he said, satisfied. Currently appraised at approximately $340,000. I laughed, a short, startled sound that felt like a cough. Those jerseys are mine. I bought every authentic piece before we got married. Doesn't matter, he replied. They appreciated in value during the marriage. He's entitled to half their current worth. My blood ran cold. The collection wasn't an investment. It was a biography. The 86 Flutie I saved 3 months for in college when I ate noodles and pretended it was discipline. The Brady I bought the morning after we won, my dad crying next to me in his old recliner. The bird jersey he gave me on his last Christmas. You don't split a life with a calculator. He can have the house, I said evenly, the cars, even my retirement account. But he isn't touching my jerseys. Then you'll lose everything in court, he said, and hung up, confident I would blink first. I turned slowly in my chair and looked at the wall. Each frame held a story I could read by heart. I stood, opened the top left frame with practiced hands, and ran a fingertip along the signature like you might trace a scar you earned and don't regret. Then I took a breath, pulled out my phone, and called Trevor. He owns Legends and Lines, the kind of memorabilia shop that smells like leather, paper, and dusted history. I need a favor, I said. A big one. You sure? He asked after I told him what the lawyer wanted. Positive, I said. He wants to play games. I'll show him how games are actually played. The next morning, I started the plan the way you start a good heist, with documentation. I took each jersey down, photographed every angle, every stitch, every certificate. I logged serial numbers I could recite backward. I filed digital copies, printed 2 sets, and sealed one in an envelope with a notary stamp. I drove to Trevor's shop with a box that looked ordinary and wasn't. Here we go, Trevor murmured, flipping a loop to his eye. He glanced at me. When you win, you won't feel like you won. I know, I said. I spent the week executing with the kind of focus people mistake for calm. Clear folders, red tabs for receipts, blue tabs for insurance documents, green for storage. By the time his attorney filed a motion to seize my collection pending valuation, everything that mattered was already out of reach. Court was set for Monday. I slept Sunday night in fragments and woke before my alarm to the hum of the climate control and the feeling you get before a storm when the air is holding its breath. My ex-husband walked into the courtroom in a suit that tried too hard. He wouldn't look at me. His lawyer did, though, with the pleasant face of someone who believes the math is on his side. Your Honor, he began, my client is entitled to half the value of Ms. Ellison's sports memorabilia collection, valued at $340,000. The judge turned to me. Ms. Ellison, how do you respond? I stood and felt the room narrow to a clean white line. Your Honor, I said, voice steady, I'd like to present evidence that changes the nature of this case. The lawyer's mouth tightened. What evidence? I opened my briefcase and placed a thick folder on the table. Receipts, I said softly, and began laying them out in a neat grid. For 37 high-quality replica jerseys purchased over the past 10 days from various online retailers. Total cost, $2,247. Silence moved through the room like a tide pulling back. The judge frowned. I don't understand. People see frames, I said, and assume what's inside is priceless. I lifted one jersey from evidence and handed the judge a magnifying glass. If you look at the signature on this Tom Brady, you'll notice it's perfectly uniform. No pressure variation, no ink pooling at the start or the turn. That's because it's printed, not signed. A facsimile. The judge tilted the glass, nodded slowly. My wall at home, I continued, is full of replicas in expensive frames with replica certificates. The frames cost more than the shirts. My ex-husband shot to his feet. That's impossible. I've looked at those jerseys for 8 years. You've looked at frames, I said, turning to face him for the first time. You never looked at the jerseys. His lawyer shuffled papers, trying to find the floor beneath him. Our appraiser valued the collection. Based on what? I asked. Your client's descriptions? Photos? Did your appraiser ever touch a single jersey on my wall? The pause gave me my answer. I slid a second folder to the judge. These are the authentication documents from my real collection. Every authentic piece was purchased before marriage and has been stored in a climate-controlled facility since 2015. Here is the security video from 3 days ago, documenting my access. On the screen, I appeared in grainy black and white, handling jerseys with the reverence of someone moving glass. The difference between the storage pieces and the wall pieces was immediate, physical. The weight of the fabric, the way a real signature sits on a weave like music sits on silence. The judge's eyebrows rose page by page. Ms. Ellison, he said, are you telling this court that your husband lived with replica jerseys for 8 years and never knew? I'm telling you, I said, that I never claimed the wall jerseys were authentic. I told him, on day 1, I was preserving my real collection properly. I kept them somewhere safe from light, safe from hands, and, frankly, safe from this. His lawyer tried to rally. This is deception. No, I said, sliding a third document forward. This is transparency. The household insurance policy, filed jointly every year. Notice the exclusion. No coverage for valuable collectibles in the home, because the valuable collectibles were not in the home. He signed this, every year. The judge scanned the line, then looked at my ex-husband. Did you review these policies when you signed them? He swallowed. I signed where she told me to. So you signed documents stating there were no valuable collectibles in your home, the judge said dryly, while believing there were valuable collectibles in your home. The room's air shifted. I felt it. The math was changing. I reached back into my case and lifted a large box. The bailiff helped me place it on the table. I unlatched it and carefully removed the authentic Brady Super Bowl jersey, the one that had sat in climate control like a memory in amber. Side by side with the replica, the difference was offensive. Real ink that rose and fell with the curve of a hand, heavyweight fabric that didn't pretend. This, I said, voice lower now, is the jersey I bought in 2001 for $2,200. It's worth around $18,000 today. It has never hung on my wall during the marriage. The judge nodded slowly, absorbing the contrast. Across the aisle, my ex-husband's lawyer looked like he could feel the ground slipping. He opened his mouth to pivot, to anything. I closed the box gently. Your Honor, I said, there's more. And every head in that room turned a fraction closer. The courtroom turned into a lab table. Everything ordinary was cut open and labeled. Based on the evidence, the judge said, I'm prepared to hear argument regarding the nature and value of the collection. My ex-husband's lawyer rose again, louder now, as if volume could reverse momentum. Your Honor, even if some jerseys are replicas, our appraisal was conducted from photos and my client's descriptions. I finished for him, not unkindly. Your appraiser never laid a hand on a single garment. The judge's gaze slid back to the lawyer. Is that accurate? He hesitated. We were given high-resolution photographs and... Thank you, the judge said, which is how judges say, that will be all. I stepped to the evidence table and laid the two Bradys side by side, the replica from my wall and the authentic from storage. You don't have to be a collector to see it, I said, soft but certain. Feel the weight. Look at the ink. One is a print. One is a hand. I pointed to the curve of the signature where the line thickened at the downstroke. Real pens breathe. The judge examined them a second time. The silence had texture, felt like felt. I slid forward the household insurance policy and tapped the exclusion in black and white. Every year, I said, we jointly declared no valuable collectibles in the home. My authentic pieces were never on those walls. They were in climate-controlled storage from 2015 onward. I nodded to the bailiff, who cued the security video again. Me in a cinder block corridor, pulling a rolling ladder, unlocking the unit, handling fabric like it was glass. The frames at home, I added, cost more than the shirts. My ex-husband stood abruptly. She deceived me. The judge lifted a brow. Did she ever explicitly say the wall jerseys were authentic? He opened his mouth, closed it. She said she was preserving the collection. And she did, the judge replied. I didn't smile. I didn't look at him. Instead, I placed the authentication dossier down like a landing. Your Honor, these documents show that all authentic acquisitions occurred before marriage. Serial numbers, invoices, provenance. The judge paged through, his expression unchanged, which is how victory looks when it isn't wearing a costume. Across counsel table, my ex-husband's lawyer changed lanes. Regardless, my client remains entitled to half of all marital assets acquired during the marriage and alimony, given that he has been unemployed. About that, I said gently, and reached for a fourth folder. There's additional information regarding his employment status. The lawyer's head snapped up. What now? I handed the packet to the judge. For the past 2 years, my ex-husband has operated an unlicensed wellness coaching business out of our home. These are bank records showing recurring deposits from clients, Tuesdays and Thursdays mostly, none of which were reported on our joint tax returns. My ex-husband's face went slack. Those are gifts from friends. Gifts, I repeated, in neat increments of $80 and $120, from the same 15 names, accompanied by calendar notes like rate increase next month and package renewal. I lifted a printed thread of text messages into view. Here are messages confirming appointments, rates, and services. I redacted client identities to protect their privacy. The judge studied the bank pages, the cadence of deposits stacked like fence pickets. The room shifted again. The lawyer tried to talk through it. Your Honor, even if there were earnings, they were de minimis. Total deposits, I said, $67,000 over 2 years. The lawyer's mouth worked. Your Honor. The judge looked up, patience thinning. Counsel. I kept my voice level. He claimed unemployment, sought alimony, while concealing income, operating without a business license. My ex-husband stared at the tabletop as if the wood grain might open and swallow him. I need to confer with my attorney. We'll recess for 15 minutes, the judge said. In the hallway, the air felt cooler. My hands trembled, not with triumph, something closer to grief for the life that had turned into an exhibit. Trevor texted, "Breathe, don't gloat, just land the plane." I typed back, "Copy." When we returned, the lawyer stood with a new stillness. Your Honor, my client would like to amend his financial disclosure, he swallowed. He acknowledges approximately $67,000 in previously unreported income. The judge made a note. Understood. The lawyer rallied once more, but now he sounded like a man sweeping water with a broom. Even so, my client maintains a claim to the appreciation of the memorabilia during marriage. I glanced at the judge. May I call an expert? Trevor entered carrying a binder that could have anchored a ship. He was sworn in, then took the stand with the calm of a man who has lived in numbers long enough to believe in them. I'm Trevor Martinez, he said, owner of Legends and Lines, certified appraiser with the American Society of Appraisers. I've tracked Ms. Ellison's authentic collection for 15 years. Mr. Martinez, I asked, what is the current value of the authentic collection compared to the purchase value? He opened the binder. The collection's current market value is lower than total purchase price by approximately $47,000. Sports memorabilia markets are volatile. Some items appreciate, others depreciate. On balance, this collection has decreased in value during the marriage period. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge leaned forward. So even if appreciation were at issue, there was none? Negative appreciation, Trevor said. In plain language, a loss. I let the math sit there, clean and merciless. The judge closed the files with a soft thud that sounded, at least to me, like an ending. Here's the court's ruling. The memorabilia in question constitutes premarital assets. Ms. Ellison retains ownership of all authentic items. The wall-mounted replicas hold negligible value. Marital assets, the house equity, vehicles, joint accounts, will be divided equally. Alimony is denied due to the petitioner's material misrepresentation of income and ongoing unlicensed business activity. Each party bears their own attorney fees. Paper rustled, a pen clicked, somewhere a shoe scraped. It was astonishing, the ordinary sounds that followed a life being redrawn. Outside, in the parking lot, my ex-husband hurried after me. "You planned this," he hissed. "You made a fool of me." I turned and met his eyes, the way you face a dog that might bite. "I didn't plan your lies," I said. "I prepared for them." I let the words settle. "There's a difference." His jaw worked. "You humiliated me in there." "You humiliated yourself," I said quietly. "I documented it." He flinched, then looked past me, at nothing, and walked away. I stood for a moment, feeling neither victory nor relief, just the ache that follows a marathon you didn't want to run. Trevor called. "How's the runway?" "Foamed," I said. "We landed." "Then go home," he said. "Hang the truth where it belongs." That night, I drove to the storage facility and slid the corrugated door up with both hands. The scent of cardboard, fabric, and cold air, home, but not a house, rose to meet me. I loaded the real collection carefully, each piece nested like a chapter returning to its spine. At home, I opened the wall, one frame at a time. The replicas came down with a whisper. The authentic pieces went up, and the room changed temperature, like a person returning to their own name. When I hung the bird jersey above my desk, I pressed my palm lightly to the glass. "Hey, Dad," I said, and it didn't feel foolish. It felt like punctuation. My phone buzzed. Trevor again. Local news wants a quote. "Woman outsmarts ex with replica collection." I texted back. "No quotes, no gloating, just this. I paid for this, so I'm keeping it." He sent a thumbs up and a heart, a language for the unsentimental that still meant everything. I stood back and looked at the wall. Not trophies, not commodities, proof of who I had been before marriage, of what I had carried through it, of what I refused to surrender in order to buy peace that wouldn't have been peace at all. Behind me, the climate control hummed, steady, invisible work to hold conditions just right. I understood the machine. You protect what matters from heat, from light, from hands that don't know how to touch. Not to hide it, but so that when you finally reveal it, it's still itself. The room was quiet and fully alive. 6 months later, the divorce story became local legend. The news called it the replica gambit. Friends sent me screenshots from collector forums. Someone even made a meme. I ignored all of it. Then came the letter from the IRS. My ex-husband was being audited for unreported income. The same deposits I'd shown in court had triggered a full investigation. Additional evidence surfaced. Cash payments, falsified deductions, clients he'd never disclosed. He was facing penalties and possibly charges. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Trevor called that night. "Guess what? Your story's boosting business. 3 collectors already asked if you'd sell the Brady." "Not interested," I said automatically. $28,000, he said. "That's the offer." I looked up at the wall. The real Brady jersey glowed under soft light, the inked signature dancing across the fabric like a heartbeat. "Trevor," I said, "it's not for sale." He laughed softly. "Didn't think so. Just had to try." After we hung up, I sat alone in my office, surrounded by the quiet hum of climate control and history. The frames shimmered with their own logic. She protected them from him, I thought, but she also protected them from herself. That was the truth. I'd hidden them away the moment I realized marriage had turned into negotiation. In protecting my collection, I'd protected the part of me that believed in joy without justification. Life was quieter after that. I focused on work, on rebuilding something normal. I started volunteering at a local youth center, teaching girls how to budget, how to track expenses, how to read contracts before they signed them. The irony wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, while restocking supplies, I met Caleb. He was helping repair the gym lights, tall and a little clumsy, with the kind of smile that looks borrowed from sunlight. We talked about tools first, then music, then life. When he asked me what I did, I almost said, collect mistakes. Instead, I said, I manage investments. "Numbers, huh?" he said. "I work with wood. Guess we both try to make things last." He wasn't like my ex. He didn't fill silences. He let them breathe. We started seeing each other on weekends. Simple things. Dinner, walks, quiet conversation. He never asked about the divorce. He didn't need to. One evening, when he came by for dinner, his eyes caught the jerseys lining my office walls. "Wow," he said softly. "These are incredible. Are they real?" "Yes," I said. Then, with a wry smile, "Now they are." He glanced back at me, reading the shadow in my voice. "There's a story there." "There's always a story," I said. He didn't press. He just nodded, a silent promise to wait until I was ready. Weeks later, while cooking, he asked about the bird jersey. Was that your first? My favorite, I corrected. It was my father's gift when I graduated college. Said every person needs something that reminds them of who they were before the world tells them who to be. That's a good line, he said quietly. He had a few of those. The conversation moved easily, naturally, until he told me about his ex, Elena, an art dealer who measured affection in price tags. She didn't care about the work, he said, just the resale value. Every time I made something, she'd ask, "How much could you get for it?" I started to hate the smell of sawdust. I understood him instantly. Different story, same wound. We became closer, slow, cautious. I didn't want to rush into another life that would require hiding anything. Months passed. My name stopped appearing in the local paper. People stopped asking if the story was true. The noise faded. What stayed was peace. The kind that comes when the drama ends, but the lesson doesn't. One rainy evening, Caleb and I sat on the couch watching a game. My favorite team was losing, but I didn't care. He reached over and took my hand. "You ever think you'll sell any of them?" he asked, nodding toward the jerseys. "Never," I said. "Not because of money, because of meaning." He smiled. I think I get that. In my shop, I build custom tables. People always ask for perfect wood. No knots, no scars. But the knots are the story. The scars are what hold the grain together. I turned my head toward him, studying his profile, the soft seriousness there. "You'd get along with my dad," I said. He looked at me. "You still talk about him like he's here." "In this house, he is." Later that night, I stood alone in my office, the glow from the streetlight washing the jerseys in silver. I realized I wasn't guarding them anymore. I was sharing them, if not physically, then emotionally, with someone who actually cared. For the first time in years, the room didn't feel like a vault. It felt like a gallery again. 3 years later, I married Caleb on a quiet spring afternoon. No luxury hall, no grand speeches, just a lakeside ceremony surrounded by people who knew what it meant to lose and rebuild. The wind moved softly over the water, and when we said our vows, I didn't feel the fear that usually comes when you hand someone your heart. I felt certainty. After the ceremony, we came home to my house, the one that used to feel too big, and it finally felt like it fit. Caleb walked into my office for the first time since we'd gotten back from our honeymoon. "I think I should give you your wedding gift now," he said, his grin tugging at something familiar in me. He led me to the wall where my collection hung, then pointed to a new frame covered by a white cloth. "Go ahead." I lifted the fabric. Inside was a Larry Bird jersey, the final game edition. Authentic, signed, perfect. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. "How did you—" "Trevor helped," he said. "Took me months to find one I could trust. I wanted to do it right." I touched the glass carefully. "This must have cost—" He interrupted gently. 8 months of packed lunches and no takeout, just like you did for your first one." The lump in my throat surprised me. "Why would you do that?" "Because you taught me what value means," he said. "And I wanted to add to your collection the same way you built it, with sacrifice, not just money." He looked around the room at the glow of memories framed in glass. He said, "I used to think these were just things. Now I get it. Every piece is a chapter. Every stitch is a story." I smiled through tears. "You understand me better than anyone ever has." He shrugged lightly. "Maybe because I've had to rebuild things too." That night, as we hung the new jersey beside the others, he asked, "Do you ever regret not just selling the whole collection during the divorce? You could have taken the money and started fresh." I thought about it seriously. No, selling them would have meant I caught myself, then corrected. He won. Not the divorce. That was inevitable. He would have won the part of me that believed these were just things. "But they are things," Caleb said, not unkindly. "No," I said. "They're anchors. They're reminders of my father, of the nights we spent cheering until our voices broke, of the first paycheck I ever earned. He wanted to turn them into numbers on a spreadsheet, but they're not numbers. They're proof that love, sacrifice, and joy leave fingerprints." He nodded slowly, understanding. "So when you said, 'I paid for this, so I'm keeping it,' you weren't talking about money." "Exactly," I said. "I was talking about meaning." Years passed, and life softened around the edges. Caleb's business grew, my work stabilized, and our evenings were filled with quiet, music, laughter, sometimes silence that didn't need to be filled. Then, one evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone buzzed. A message from a name I hadn't seen in years. Ethan, my ex-husband. Saw the article in Sports Illustrated about your collection. Heard they're worth even more now. I still think I deserved half. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling nothing. Not anger, not triumph, just distance. Caleb walked in from the kitchen. Who's texting you with that face? I handed him the phone. He read the message and looked at me. You going to reply? Maybe, I said. I sat at the desk, typed slowly. You're right. They're worth more now. But not in dollars. They're worth more because they're hanging on the wall of someone who loves them, not sitting in storage waiting to be sold by someone who never understood them. I hesitated, then added one more line. I paid for this life, so I'm keeping it. I hit send and never heard from him again. That night, Caleb came into my office with 2 cups of coffee. The steam curled between us like quiet applause. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. For the first time, I think I actually am. He nodded toward the wall. You know, most people see jerseys, but what I see is a map of who you are. I smiled. Then I guess you're the only one who's ever read it right. I turned off the lights except for the small lamp above the bird jersey. The fabric glowed softly, like it remembered everything. My father's pride, my late nights of work, the pain, the survival, the love that finally understood. 5 years later, the collection had grown to 43 pieces. Each one carried a story, a sacrifice, a heartbeat. People still asked if I'd ever sell. The answer never changed. No, I always said. I paid for this, so I'm keeping it. But what they didn't know was that it wasn't just about jerseys. It was about identity. About learning that protecting what you love sometimes means being smarter than those who would take it from you. And more than anything, it was about learning that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. My ex-husband showed me that he saw value only in price. Caleb shows me every day that he sees value in meaning. That's why he gets to share the wall. That's why he gets to add to it. Because when you find someone who understands what truly matters, you don't hide the good stuff in storage anymore. You hang it where both of you can see it. And you never, ever let anyone convince you that love or life can be measured in dollars. Because some things are priceless. Not for what they cost, but for what they mean.